we will see how we can represent each item of the product backlog. So here we will talk about user stories. Usually there is a chasm between business and development, right? We have business on one side, well, sometimes in our companies in a different floor or in a different building, creating large specifications. And then when they are done with that, they pass it below the door to the developers on the other side, sometimes with a pizza and coffee, right? So, and each one of them takes their own part, they do their part. When this is done, then they give it back to business that will analyze and approve or not, right? And then create more documents, and then we have very large cycles with very little collaboration. Well, in such a scenario, it's impossible to be agile. It's impossible to be adaptive. We need short cycles of feedback. And the best way we can have that is having much stronger collaboration between business and development. So this is one agile principle. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. If you look at the extreme programming methodology, they would tell you that you need someone from the customer, could be someone from business, sitting together with the team members. Well, we don't actually have that in Scrum. We have the product owner. And the product owner maybe is not the client, probably not, but is someone that is there in order to generate business value, in order to establish, well, at least to create hypotheses of what are the next most important things to be created. So one way or the other, either we are having someone with a business perspective working with the team, or people, business people in the team, right? We get business and development working together. And then we shorten the cycles. User stories are based on that idea that we need to create together, to define together what needs to be built. And if we talk about Scrum, developers and product owner, and maybe even other stakeholders, right, could sit together to prepare those user stories. And that's what we call the conversations. The best case, well, and it is the usual case, is when we have them in product backlog refinement sessions. Okay, so that's the first thing about user stories. The other thing, well, it has to do with its name, user stories. So we are talking about the user here, right? And what we have on the user here, well, some people would say it's the user's perspective, what we put in the story. I would just say we're describing on the story something the user can do with your product. It's something you're allowing your user to do by creating this functionality. What we call a card here is actually the backlog item. It's actually the user story, right? Why are those called cards? Because the people from extreme programming would write the user stories on those index cards. We prefer sticky notes, right? like this one, or maybe tools today, right? But they would use index cards. So that's why this is called a card, right? It's a short description of what the user will be able to do. That's the backlog item. When we imagine a product backlog refinement session or something that could take place at the beginning of a sprint planning session, right? We will look at the top of the product backlog. We'll take the next item, the next user story, the next card, right? We'll have a conversation about it, and we'll prepare it, like, adding more details or slicing it to get it more fine-grained if necessary, right? And whatever else is needed, right? And those, I would call those business details of that user story that we are establishing, that we are describing now at this session, is what we call the confirmation. Why confirmation? Because it tells us how this should behave when created, when done, right? So once we implement that, it will behave this way. That's the confirmation part. And some people would call it acceptance tests. We can write them in the form of tests, right? Or in the form of criteria, and then we would call that acceptance criteria. Anyway, this is a description on how this will behave once implemented. The extreme programming people would talk about acceptance tests, right? What they wanted us was to write automated tests, right? Simulating the user using the product, right? And then see if the response of the product was the expected response. Those are the acceptance tests. And then people created the acceptance criteria, which was a way to describe what would be done on those tests without the test itself. And then it could be turned into tests. But understand that the acceptance criteria are made mostly to guide the developers on what is the things that they need to produce, to create during the sprint. So we call those the 3 C's of the user stories: card, conversation, confirmation. And then talking about the card part, one very usual way to represent each and every user story is by using this template here. I, user, we can use the user personas for that, can or want or should do this, and that's the thing to be implemented so that I can get this value. So it has 3 parts: who, what, and why. If you look back in 2005, if I'm not mistaken, there was a great book about user stories by Mike Cohn. And Mike actually brought this well-known format as we are using it today. It's older, right? But he kind of revived it. So one example: I, Joseph the teacher, can search books by title so that I can choose to buy them. This is a product backlog item. And well, thinking from the extreme programming perspective, they would say you should represent each and every item in your product backlog as user stories. And where are the technical parts here? Well, they are below each user story. When we talk about incremental work, we are talking about creating each layer, each component, each technical bit of our work little by little, incrementally. Our product grows incrementally, and each part of it also grows incrementally.